The last 50 years, there's only one Republican with a group of Democrats named after them. That's Reagan Democrats. And they came over not because Ronald Reagan said, I'm just like Jimmy Carter. They came over because Reagan, like Phil Gramm, drew a line in the sand. Said there's a fundamental difference in vision, and it turned out millions of conservatives, but it also brought out millions of FDR Democrats who said, those are my values. And it turned the country around. We speak the truth. And that is a rare quality in Washington.
Throughout his speech as it goes and finishes the speech. And all of a sudden, Reagan tells me, he said, Art, you wouldn't believe it, but this guy, I don't have any idea who he was. He got up and went to the podium, and he started talking. These people were screaming and hollering and banging, and the walls were shaking, everything like that. I was just sitting there. I didn't understand it because he was speaking Spanish. So I just said this thing was going on wild and crazy, and I sort of felt totally out of it, so I started clapping when all the other people were clapping. And the other person came up and said, Mr. President, I wouldn't clap if I were you. He said, well, why not? Everyone else is clapping. He said, they're translating your speech.
Since this is about Reagan, I'm happy to be a little footnote to it, but let me tell you two Reagan stories. One is a story that really tells you something about the humanity of Ronald Reagan. I called Reagan to tell him that I was going home to Texas to resign from Congress and announce that I was going to run for re-election as a Republican. And you got to remember, now that looks like a real smart political move, but no Republican had ever gotten more than 32% of the vote in my district. And so when I called Reagan, I explained to him why I felt I needed to do it, because if I didn't do it, then there would be people who would basically claim that I'd flown false colors, and that I ought to give people an opportunity to decide whether or not they wanted me to represent them as a Republican. So Reagan said, well, sounded like the right thing to do to him. And so anyway, I hung up. And so he told Lee Atwater that I'd called him. Lee Atwater was his sort of political guru. And so Lee Atwater begged Reagan to call me back and urge me not to do it, that I was going to lose, and it was going to hurt Reagan at a critical moment because we had lost 33 seats in the House of Representatives, and the economy was in a recession, and it was sort of the low point of the presidency. And so anyway, Atwater said to Reagan, you know, this is really an election about you. And Reagan said to Atwater, Lee, not everything is about me. This is not about what's good for me, this is about what's right. And when I heard that story, it has always defined to me the sort of humanity of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was not just a great man and a great conservative, he was a great human being.